Season 3 of Star Trek Picard has come to an explosive end with the series' finale, The Last Generation, leaving fans with plenty to unpack. The final season of the spin-off series finally reunites Jean-Luc Picard with his former Enterprise crew. Warning, spoilers ahead. On the way to the final installment, it's revealed that the Borg has been behind the changeling plot all along, and Picard's son Jack is key to their plans. Now that it's all over, it's time to dig into every detail of the Star Trek Picard finale. We're here to unravel its mysteries, explore its messages, see how it all ties up, and prepare Trekkies for whatever comes next. Hope has been a central, enduring message throughout Star Trek Picard, and it rings just as true as the series ends. When we first reconnect with him as a retired, world-weary winemaker in Season 1, Jean-Luc Picard seems to have lost his hope in the future, mankind, and himself. Thanks to visits from a young android in Season 1, an immortal trickster in Season 2, and a desperate call for help from an old friend in Season 3, Picard has finally realized that hope is never truly lost. In the finale episode, The Last Generation, the Borg has returned and assimilated a new drone army. Earth is about to fall, but Picard has reassembled his old crew, pulled the USS Enterprise out of mothballs, and set a course to stop them. However, the Borg Queen has an unexpected ally, Jack Crusher, son of Picard and Dr. Crusher. He's inherited his father's Borg-assimilated DNA and is acting as the voice of the Borg Collective. Now the Earth is on the verge of destruction. All the younger Starfleet officers have been assimilated through a piece of Borg genetic code introduced to their DNA through transporters, and the entire Federation fleet is under Borg control. Things look as hopeless as they've ever been. But then, a message is received by Federation President Anton Chekhov.
Hope is never lost. There are always possibilities.
All season long, fans see evolution. First we meet Vadic, a changeling whose rogue faction of shapeshifters have new abilities that help them survive. We also meet a new version of Commander Data, an android golem infused with the personalities of different Soong androids, representing an evolution of his former self. As his creator puts it,
evolution is not an act of preservation. It's addition.
Face to face with the new Borg Queen, Picard learns that the Collective has been weak and vulnerable since last we saw them. Thanks to their alliance with the Changelings, though, their new Collective no longer requires assimilation at all, or even the combination of machine and biology. They can propagate genetically, with the Federation's young becoming their new generation of Borg. Thus, their new mission is not to assimilate, but to annihilate. They have not taken Soong's words to heart, though. They'd only evolve to survive, and that turns out to be her weakness. Season 3 of Star Trek Picard hasn't just been about the reunion of the Star Trek, the Next Generation crew. The story of Seven of Nine also takes center stage and comes to its conclusion in The Last Generation, fulfilling an arc that began all the way back in Star Trek Voyager. Since she left the Borg Collective in Season 4 of that series, Seven has struggled to find her place. In Season 1 of Picard, we discover that Seven has joined a group of rogue marshals called Fenris Rangers, before finally agreeing to join Starfleet at the end of Season 2. But her time aboard the USS Titan as first officer isn't always pleasant. Frequent clashes with Captain Shaw, whose personal resentment of her Borg nature makes him icy towards her, leave her feeling isolated and alone and unsure if Starfleet is where she belongs. But when the Borg attacks, Shaw is killed, leaving Seven in command. In The Last Generation, she rises to the occasion. With the help of Raffi, she retakes the bridge from Borg control, and after discovering that Picard is attempting to shut down the enemy beacon, develops a plan to buy Earth time by disrupting the Borg-controlled fleet. Embracing her inner Captain Janeway, Seven even gives an inspiring pep talk to her ragtag crew, demonstrating just how far she's come. Though the fanfare around Season 3 of Star Trek Picard mostly regards the return of the Star Trek The Next Generation crew, the season also adds a major new character, Jack Crusher. The son of Jean-Luc Picard and Beverly Crusher, he's lived most of his life fighting by his mother's side on the fringes of the Federation. But as he got older, Jack knew he was different. He suffered from sleepless nights and disturbing dreams and struggled to find meaning in his life. Eventually, Jack experiences waking hallucinations. In Vox, he comes face to face with the Borg Queen and finally realizes why he suffers these spells. He's inherited some of his father's Borg-altered DNA, and his physiology is being used by the Queen as a kind of transmitter to access new Borg drones. Once he's connected to the Borg hive mind, Jack finds the one thing he's always sought: belonging. Like the Queen, who spent years as a solitary collective, Jack has suffered endless loneliness in his life. Now he finds a sense of meaning and purpose with the Borg. The role of the family is central to Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and the revelation that Jean-Luc Picard has a son with Dr. Crusher isn't the only way it makes itself known. When we first meet Geordi LaForge, now a Commodore and director of the Fleet Museum, he too is having some serious family problems. His daughter Sydney is a helmsman of the USS Titan, and she doesn't have the best relationship with him. When she puts her career and her life on the line to help Picard against the changelings, she makes it clear that her crew is her family. In The Last Generation, this same message resonates again. In the end, Picard, a man who never wanted or needed a family of his own, not only has one, but understands how important family can be. From blood family to found family, everyone from Seven to Raffi to Picard himself accepts that it truly means more than anything. More than 30 years ago, in the best of both worlds, Jean-Luc Picard is assimilated by the Borg to become their leader, Locutus. As a Borg, Picard helps the collective wipe out an entire Starfleet armada at the infamous Battle of Wolf 359, and is responsible for thousands of deaths. Since then, the physical scars of his assimilation may have healed, but Picard has remained haunted by the incident. Star Trek First Contact allows him a measure of revenge on the Borg, but Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and The Last Generation in particular, sees him finally come to terms with the experience. In the finale, he's able to not just be part of destroying the Borg Queen, which signals the end of the Borg forever. He also accepts that his time as Locutus does not define him. He no longer needs to carry the burden of that trauma because it's who he is now and what he does today that really matters. Picard isn't the only one who learns this valuable life lesson. By the end of The Last Generation, Raffi, who has long struggled with addiction and past mistakes, does the same thing. In rising up to help save the Federation, she too accepts that who she can be is what's important, not who she was. That Worf is able to help her get recognition for her heroics is icing on the cake. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the return of the Starship Enterprise, restored after its destruction in Star Trek Generations. The Last Generation sees the Enterprise deback in action fighting the Borg. Despite being decades old, the Enterprise manages to evade its targeting scanners. With the help of skillful Dr. Crusher, who's had a lot of practice fighting off foes over the last 20 years, they're able to take out their weapons. When Riker and Worf send them the location of the Borg beacon, however, it's up to the new Data and his gut feelings to pilot them inside the Borg cube and take it out. With Picard locked in an existential struggle for control of his son Jack, getting them out before Earth is destroyed by the Borg fleet may be a problem. In a heartbreaking choice, the remaining crew of the Enterprise agrees that they may have to sacrifice Worf, Riker, Picard, and Jack to save the Federation. If you're expecting shocking deaths in the series finale, though, you'll be disappointed. With the old Enterprise, anything is possible. They're able to locate and beam them up just before the Q is destroyed. In the episode's conclusion, we learn that the Enterprise D has taken its rightful place as an exhibit at the Fleet Museum. The cast of Star Trek The Next Generation is tied together by close friendships, both on the show and in real life. In the world of Star Trek, though, most of them haven't seen each other in years and are spread out across the galaxy. But in Season 3 of Star Trek Picard sees them all come back together when Picard receives a cry for help from Dr. Beverly Crusher, and soon discovers that the son he never knew he had is at the center of a plot against the Federation. By the end of The Last Generation, it's clear that these renewed friendships aren't going to be dissolving anytime soon. The new and improved Data is seen getting counseling from Deanna Troi, which helps him realize that being human is as difficult and complex as aspiring to be human. Meanwhile, Picard and Dr. Crusher appear to be happy co-parents, if not more. It finally solidifies the fact that this crew is a family now and forever and will remain close. But the series finale is about more than a renewal of bonds. It's about new ones too. Worf makes his friendship with Raffi clear, calling her a fellow warrior. Meanwhile, as Seven takes command of her own starship, we see the newfound friendships she's made with her new crewmates, Sydney LaForge and Jack Crusher. When showrunner Terry Matalas set out to craft Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, part of his motivation was to give the Star Trek The Next Generation crew the proper send-off they never got in their feature films. While fans will debate how many of his goals he managed to achieve, it's hard to argue that Matalas didn't stick the landing on this one. Following the time jump a year past Frontier Day, the crew gathers at Guy Mann's Bar 10 Forward in Los Angeles for a celebratory drink. To cap off the night, Picard proposes a friendly game of poker. This calls back to the card games they played for years as a close-knit crew. The episode's final scene also mirrors the closing shot of the series' finale, All Good Things. As they settle their hands and Picard collects his pot, the overhead camera pans out, and the iconic Star Trek fanfare begins. It's glorious, but it's not quite the end. When Season 3 of Star Trek Picard was first announced as the conclusion of the series, some fans may have expected it to tie up all loose ends and put a curtain over the character of Jean-Luc Picard. With the return of the Star Trek The Next Generation crew, it wasn't unreasonable to think this was going to be the final appearance of that cast, and that the finale might even feature a shocking death of one or more of the crew members. But in The Last Generation, not only does the entire crew make it out alive, there are clear setups for future adventures. Captain Tuvok gives Seven the good news that she's been promoted to captain herself, and she doesn't get command of just any ship. She gets the newly commissioned USS Enterprise G. At her side is First Officer Raffi, Helmsman Sidney, and her special counsel, Ensign Jack Crusher. It's a clear setup for a new spin-off, one that showrunner Terry Matalas has already teased. Audiences are even given a sneak peek at what could be its first adventure. In a final mid-credits scene, the immortal trickster Q returns to warn Jack Crusher that a new trial is about to begin. Fans can't wait to learn what that means.